off with Bitcoin today, of which I want to follow up on the short-term time frame analysis and then bring it full circle with the higher-term time frame analysis, which has been more or less the same over the past month here. There's a major signal that could be coming in as soon as tonight upon upon the daily closing basis, which would really help with the next 5 to 10 days on a general bias for the market. But for right now, as far as the short-term time frames go, this is a chart that we were working off of yesterday. We were looking for a little bit of a bouncy bounce up to the 40 to 40,500-ish region, right in this blue box territory right here. That was yesterday. We did get that, and whilst we didn't really say that there was, it's just, look, if price action confirms above, which quite literally it tested literally right to the top side of that, then I'd be looking for continuation to the prior highs. However, obviously it was a rejection, so the prior range does hold true, and that's essentially what we're looking at right now. So this is the exact same chart that we were looking at yesterday, except for the VPVR, although I think that does add a little bit more color as to the significance of our current range right now in the very, very short-term time frames if you're below an hourly. But in this case right here, it's more or less the same thing. If you're on an hourly, about 38.3 to the downside versus about 40,000 and in change, let's call it 40,200, basically the high of yesterday, to the upside. Anything between there is just another range play. And this is another instance where I want to remind myself to perhaps remind you, and also remind myself as well, that this is why range plays, especially in a market like this that is mostly ranging, they're not the most sexy thing, but they are definitely profitable. And well, sometimes it's sometimes it's just the main thing to be doing, at least in my opinion. And that's pretty much all I've done in the last week. I mean, yesterday I had one trade, just open and close, and that was it, man. That's all that the market gave me based off of my edge, and so I go back to playing video games. Anyways, in this case right here, it's going to be more or less the same thing today, actually. I am still looking, or I'm going to be looking for yet again another bounce off this low $38,000 region. If I'm on a full hour, I'd say that that's a closing basis of 38,450. If I'm on an hourly, that'd be a closing basis of about basically the low of what we saw right here, 38,250 to 38,3. Until then, I see no range resolution, and I do see some divergences building up on the short-term timeframes right here. Hourly already printed, regular bullish divergence, and I'm curious if this goes up to a full hour. Let's see over here. No, not necessarily just yet, actually. In fact, it won't even be possible right here, to be quite fair. So ultimately, what was essentially leading us into that idea yesterday? And we've actually seen the same sort of thing play out several times in the past week here. So I kind of want to go over this because I figured this is, hopefully going to be in some way helpful, especially during these more boring times. Yeah, there is actually something to do. And basically what we were looking for is we were looking at a bit of a short-term bounce based off of regular divergence calls on the very short-term timeframes, plus short-term timeframe momentum oscillators turning up right here as well. So that was your hourly through 4 hour yesterday. You can see this move right here, but this was within the context of declining volatility, right? So we worked off of extremes on the lower term timeframes. So that was first and foremost a corrective move, meaning that is more likely to play within the overall range at best, and at worst just print another lower high before continuation lower, which, to be fair, on the hourly, we did get a continuation of trend, but this is not a range resolution, at least in the way that I look at things, for like a like an actual breakout with targets back down to the blue box territory right here, which is between about 37 to 37.5 or so. Until that that is not actionable in the way that I look at things until Bitcoin closed that minimum and hourly below about 38,200 or 38,250. Or a 4 hour below about 38,400 in this case. Until then, kind of the same thing as yesterday. I am looking for this one to yet again, grind this area out, play out the LARP lines that we put in here yesterday, and probably give, another bounce. And then the question is, on that bounce, same shit as yesterday. Do we get back above the critical region right here, of which this is not relevant towards this fib? I think we were working off of maybe this chart. Yeah, we were working off this chart right here for that, and that was the 0.618 at about 40,500. You can see Bitcoin just got ever so slightly around that region. I'd say that is still the relevant region to get above for the boo laws in the short and medium term timeframes. That actually means something significant has happened with subsequent targets, back up to the prior highs of, I believe this was this week at 42,500 or so, and very likely does set Bitcoin up for another move back up to the top side of the general range that Bitcoin's been working off of for the past couple of months since early January. Consider that for the past couple of months, very little has changed on the higher term timeframes at all, basically since January, where our high side of this range, let me actually just adjust this because it's kind of getting in the way, but it is still relevant. The high side of the range is still about $44,500 on a daily closing basis versus a low side of the range, which has been steadily rising. Obviously this one over here is about $34,500. Then this one over here was about $36,500. Well, in this case, I'd say it's about $37,000 in a daily closing basis. And again, rising over time. As long as that does hold true, Bitcoin is in the process of putting in some higher lows right here, and it's got the same highs right here. And so if I did want to present some Bula-ish hopium, which still is awaiting validation, I would actually still be looking at this as, well, relevant until Bitcoin does go below on a daily closing basis. At minimum $37,000, I would actually be or err on the side of caution here, and even say $36,500 would actually resolve this one to the downside, with very likely targets back down to the macro range lows, that being between about $29,500 and about $31,000 back down around here. Very likely bounces there, and that bounce probably does fail, to be fair, over a long enough time period. But until that happens, I actually do still look at this as, hopium is alive for the Bulas and will be validated if and when Bitcoin does close a higher term time frame, namely a daily above 44,500. That would confirm this as an ascending triangle, which is a reaccumulation formation, and it does have a technical target all the way up here towards $55,000 to $56,000, probably in the following weeks upon that validation, which is also in line with 3.272 Fibonacci extension right here. That is good confluence, and then on top of that, we would naturally, confirm at the same time hidden bullish evidence of the two drives variety coming off of this low right here. For right now, that's obviously not in place, but I would say that if you are looking for, the signal of the day, if you will, a little bit of clickbait bullshit right there, I'd be saying that if the Bula's hopes are going to remain alive, we do expect that the 5-day stochastic momentum will turn back around this region here, which does imply that Bitcoin does close above 39,500 by, around end of day today. If that does happen, we will not just see 5-day stochastic momentum turn back onto the upside, but we'll see it get out of the bearish control zone for the first time since middle of December of last year. Might I remind you where Bitcoin was trading around that time by actually marking it off right here. There we go. Let me actually pull up a fresh chart because this one's going to get too convoluted and kind of annoying. Maybe not that one. Maybe this one here. Yeah, this one's fresh. All right, let me just go back to that point. So this was when Bitcoin entered into the 5-day stochastic momentum bearish control zone right around here on that failed attempt at about $52,000. Ever since then, it has been well within the bearish control zone. So if Bitcoin were to get back above there, that would obviously be a more important thing for the longer term. Doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin's going to go literally from that point to the $45,000 level immediately, but it keeps open the Bula's hopes alive. And then of course, then it goes still in the way that I look at things, range resolution. So at minimum, that would be short-term timeframes back above basically yesterday's high, 40,500 if you want to be super, conservative with it. But ultimately above there, I'd be looking for a retest of the high of the week, 42.5, very likely short-term pullback right there, and then probably does set it up for continuation of the top side of the range. Again, that would be the bullish look on this price action. And to be fair, on our shorter-term timeframe stochastic momentum oscillators, we see a very similar setup to yesterday. In fact, looking at the 4-hour right here, we do see 4-hour stochastic momentum will turn back onto the upside with any sort of closure above 39,350. That number will naturally come down upon this next closure, which is coming in about an hour and 36 minutes and 49 seconds. So, by probably midday today, or midday for myself, basically US Open for most people who are watching over here at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. We probably do see that one come down significantly, and well, that would open up the probabilities towards a more likely short-term move to the upside. Again, however, do keep in mind, we are looking at this within the context of declining volatility. So this is still a corrective move, basically the same shit as yesterday. So I would not feel confident saying that this is likely to be the one. If we go over to a 3-hour, we're going to see it in the very likely same posturing as well. Yes, indeed, we do. 38,927 is the magical number to beat. And if we go to the bi-hourly, I believe it's in the same area as well, as I did my homework this morning. Come on, load, baby. There we go. 38,700 or so, just below there. And hourly is going to be flippy floppy, but going to be turning back up above 38.5. So in this case, you do see all lower term timeframes kind of building upon each other, and I usually look at that as a good signal If the highest of those lower term timeframes, in this case, that would be the 4 hour, so that was around 39,300, does get validated above, very likely going to test those range highs that we saw, or sorry, not the range highs, but the high from yesterday, somewhere around there, see a similar move to that. And then, well, the question is, does Bitcoin actually validate above that region or not? That would initiate the next set of targets. If not, then probably same thing as what we saw yesterday as well. That quick move up and that quick rejection, basically. So I do want to bring this up here too, in the sense that not only is the 5-day going to be resolved today, but also the daily as well. And we have naturally seen the daily stochastic momentum pivot point come down significantly. Before it was, I think, like well above $41,000, now coming down to almost $40,000 even, about $40,350, which is essentially the high of yesterday. So I do want to have all those numbers in mind, but basically I would be expecting, probably mostly sideways today, barring, assuming that we don't see the validation for the range resolution, even in the medium term timeframes, which again, to the upside is 40,000. Hey, where's my damn thing? Oh, I put it to the side. But basically 40,500 to the upside on even an hourly closure, or below about 38,250 on an hourly closure, or if using a 4 hour, a couple $100 above that would probably be good enough, with a move back down around this blue box territory, which, by the way, would be a test still towards this rising trend line that we have been working off of on these higher lows. Below that region is where everything starts to flip around, at least in the way they look at things. And, the Boo laws no longer have really much going for them. They'll see all of the higher term time frame momentum turn down against it, plus an actual break for the last prior higher low. So you'd have a technical breakdown plus momentum turning against it. And we probably start to see volatility tick up as well. And that's going to initiate major targets to the downside, probably play out all of the bearish things that we see over on this chart over here. So until then, I do hate to say this, but probably going to be, more or less a boring day. And this is one of those times where, it's very reminiscent to me of 2018 and 2019, when things were very, very slow. Things were very, very boring. Ranges started to tighten up drastically. People were getting extremely excited about, very small percentage moves to the upside and very small percentage move to the downside. And realistically, Bitcoin was playing out a range for like 3 months fucking straight, right? And very little happened. Here's the thing though, it's not that I would, but obviously market sentiment is much more on the bearish side right now. Or at least I see it around, and I'm curious to ask the community here as well if you see it around, or if you have an opinion on this. But when I go to crypto Twitter, when I go to crypto YouTube, which we can actually go look at soon enough here, and when I go to the fear and greed index, obviously the market is a lot more on the bearish side. So to me, it does look like the general participant in this market is of the same opinion essentially, and has been for a long time. If we reference the fear and greed index chart way back on over here, you can see that Bitcoin has basically been within the fearful zone for running on 3+ months now, basically since end of November. Only had a few stints into the neutral zone, which wasn't even the greedy zone, but just neutrality essentially. So ultimately, if we are going off sentiment, I do think that the market is a lot more weighted towards the downside, obviously, as you would expect after, basically a 50% move to the downside from all-time high or prior all-time highs. Anyways, I want to once again put the emphasis on the global open interest right here. We do see on the hourly data feed, it's still just barely above 10 billion. I set an alert yesterday to be aware and basically notified on my computer when it does go, if and when it does go below 10 billion, because I look at that as a bit of a reset area. So we've come very, very close to that already. Very, very close to that. So what is that essentially telling us? Essentially telling us that people are letting go of their leverage positions and essentially resetting this number, which is generally a good thing, more long term. And Bitcoin price action, is still within the process of operating at higher lows, to be fair. And, just kind of speaking off the cuff here, and this is something that I'm mostly a chart purist, but it is an interesting sort of thought experiment to mull over, especially on a day like today when things are more or less the same. What is a general scheme of what's going on in the world? Well, Bitcoin is, for what it's worth right now, setting it still on higher lows on the macro, above that last $30,000 macro cycle low, or sorry, not macro cycle, but macro range low from here, in comparison to our lows right here, amidst a pretty, diabolical background. We have Ukraine-Russia war. It's not World War III, but Ukraine-Russia war is, still a big deal. Although World War III, I doubt anything's going to do too well. But hey, let's just pray that doesn't happen. We're talking about eight fucking rate hikes, which are being priced in. Which look, I'm not a fucking macro analyst. I'm not a part of the Fed. I highly doubt that there's going to be actually 8 rate hikes this year. Maybe 4, maybe 5. I think that could be relevant, as Bitcoin does have a little bit of a short-term rally right here. But the thing is that as soon as the Fed comes out and says, we're not going to do 8, but we're going to do 4 maybe, the market, as it has priced in 8 rate hikes, is going to rally off that, even though they are still raising rates. That's the way that things typically work. They get priced in as as that starts to get accepted into the general sort of sphere. On top of that, what else do we have? We had regulations. We had the executive order that Bitcoin was living through. We had a China ban that Bitcoin lived through. The more and more things that I look at, it's like, okay, what's if you're going to play the narrative, which is usually not the best idea, but if you are going to play the narrative, actually, barring like a World War III, I'm not so sure. It's like, what are they going to use to get this one down, at this point? And then on top of that, if we want to do a little bit of a fun action right here, and look, I don't know if this is wise for me to do, but hey, we can go over here to YouTube and check out people's titles, right? Check out people's titles, which, hey, might not be the best way of doing things, obviously, because I know that for myself, a lot of the time I will deliberately put in a contradictory title towards what my content is, but just perusing around the titles, for all of the biggest channels, crash. This person's talking about a crash. Free fall. Why isn't crypto going up? Says Jason. Lessons from the past from this from Cowan. This guy's actually bullish, but he's always bullish, so it doesn't count. Banter is sounding the alarm bells. I mean, they're always bullish, aren't they? Vladimir Putin created the Bitcoin. Okay, that's Dan Pena. He also claims that he's killed a bear with his bare hands. So take that with a grain of salt, just saying. Yep, this person, whale crash as predicted. Okay, that's very interesting sentiments. This person, worse than expected. Yeah, so just, more setting up for another drop, emergency. We're seeing more and more of this stuff. And then crypto's bearish. Game over. Game over, man. It's game over. Look, so I'm just saying that, it's a lot more... the market certainly, the sentiment of the market is certainly more on the bear side. There is absolutely zero doubt about that at all whatsoever. So I just wanted to kind of peruse around that, especially in a time like this where, I mean, look, I like being bearish. I trade better in a bearish environment. I don't see it just yet. I can definitely get there. Below $36,500, fuck yeah, man. Bearish as fuck. But I have these rules in place for myself because, well, I've been burnt in the past from, from getting bearish or bullish before it was really time to, and what price action was telling me. And always, fucking always, man, if there's the simplest thing that I could always, just impart onto anyone out there that has made me broke in the past, because I did not listen to it, would be this: trend. It's the most fucking simplest thing. Anyone can learn how to fucking identify a trend, and until we get a full-on trend reversal, or until we get some lower lows here, which we don't have just yet. We do have lower highs. We certainly have lower highs. We don't have lower lows just yet. However, I can't personally get there with my own strategy. So hopefully that was helpful on Bitcoin. There you go. Basically short-term bounce, and then see if it gets above any of the critical regions. Personally speaking, I'd be looking at the 5-day stochastic momentum. If it does validate to the upside above 39.6, then I would be looking at that as another indication that we're probably going to try some upside out of this range first, and that kind of makes those more sexy targets to the upside more relevant. So hopefully that was helpful. And there you go for Bitcoin, sirs and zers.